wait for you guys to tune in. Welcome Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Good morning. Let me put my phone number in here. Sorry guys, I think I wasn't here a few days last week. I have had a very busy week, and I also have an equally busy week like for the rest of the month where I'm like literally at USCIS's office every day. Um, but whenever I can, get in here, I will do my best to get in here. But it's been incredibly busy, back to back to back to back to back to back. Like with clients, as you guys know, these interviews are moving really quickly with marriage-based cases, and so like I'm like USCIS all the time. Okay, so let me save this pin. Okay, so I'm saving my phone number. So welcome Instagram, welcome YouTube, welcome Facebook. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. My name is Aisha Chidole. I'm an immigration attorney. I represent clients all over the United States with their immigration matters. We handle family immigration, which consists of marriage cases, fiancé cases, parents filing for children, children filing for parents, siblings, and then we also handle humanitarian work, which is VAWA cases, victims of abuse with their U.S. citizen relatives or green card holder relatives, T visas, which is human labor trafficking and commercial sex trafficking. We also handle U visas, which are victims of a serious crime, and also, what was I going to say? We also handle removal cases. So if you're in removal or deportation proceedings, we'll be happy to assist you with your case. Our phone number is 678-325-1037 or 678-233-2170. I have the number pinned on my Instagram, and I also have it on my YouTube and Facebook profile, so you should be able to see it. All right, let's jump right into it. Someone on YouTube is saying, "Good day. Immigration and changes are fast becoming so scary with irrational reasons to deny people and report people." Definitely, it is. And this is what we expected for those of us who practiced in the previous Trump administration. This is what it looked like. And, they're slowly, well, I wouldn't even say slowly because they're doing it like just every week or every month there's a new one. These are the same changes that they had that were then circled back, and then they've now brought into place. And that's why I want to talk about this one in particular, because this change has been there. Mr. Tusk, this change about irrational reasons to deny people. The bottom line is this is not the time. And, I talk about it all the time. I hear other attorneys talk about it all the time. I read some people's comments and some people's profiles. Oh, you're trying to scare someone. You're trying to tell someone. It's the reality. It's the reality. Like this is not, and I talked about this last week, this is not a time for DIY stuff. Like you cannot, what does DIY mean? For those of you who don't know, it means do it yourself stuff, unless you practice immigration currently and you know what those cases look like when you're sitting down there with an officer and the kinds of questions they're asking. You know what requests for evidence or the types of content or whatever it is in the request for evidence that people are receiving. You know what the NOID is saying, and also they actually know the elements of the law. Believe it or not, ChatGPT does not know all the changes that are happening and as fast as they're happening. I can't tell you how many times that people say, "Oh, I saw this in ChatGPT," and I'm like, well, ChatGPT needs to update itself because the laws are changing very quickly to the point where it can't catch up, right? And so that is why it is really important that when you are submitting an application, the application to immigration has to be complete. Meaning, if you are asking for a specific benefit, you need to make sure that you meet or you are submitting enough evidence of the elements for them to make a decision. Now, this new rule that says basically they don't have to give you a request for evidence or they don't have to send you a notice of intent to deny. It's not a blanket rule where it's like, okay, you don't have this, I don't have enough to make a decision, I'm gonna just outright deny you. If it's anything, if it's anything like the first Trump's administration, here's what I anticipate. These are going to be the things that you should automatically know, like to submit your application, that you don't submit. For instance, you submit an application for a marriage-based case and you don't submit an I-130A. I cannot tell you how many times this happens, especially with people doing it themselves, where they say they hired a friend, a consultant, or a notary or something like that. Like in a case like that, you already know, well, maybe you don't know, but the rules require for a complete merit-based petition, right? You should be submitting an I-130 and an I-130A. This is, amongst other applications. But by default, if that I-130A is not included in there, you're going to be denied. Cases where people sign the signature on the wrong box. There's no point of sending you an RFE. They basically say, we're not going to send you an RFE for that. We're going to deny it. Cases where the person clearly doesn't meet the income requirement, not where there's ambiguity. I don't anticipate that with an ambiguous situation that they'll deny. I expected an ambiguity when it comes to financial affidavits. What do I mean by ambiguity? If, for instance, the income requirement is over $28,000 for a family of two, and you're submitting the person's income and they made like $20,000, there's no ambiguity there. In those cases, they may outrightly deny the case, right? Versus you send something where you're like saying, okay, the person makes $20,000, $28,000 or $27,000, but there's money in this account, or in this account, or in this account. So in that case, it doesn't necessarily require, in my opinion, and if I was a USCIS officer, since USCIS officers are doing it based on discretion, not necessarily doing it on all cases. And if you're a USCIS officer watching this is a good recommendation for you as well. To me, in that case, that's where a legitimate RFE should be issued to say, when we're calculating these numbers, they don't make any sense. Basically, think about it this way. They don't want people to submit what we call skeletal applications just to get in time for something, right? So for instance, you've got this new September 18th public charge rule coming up, so I'm sure they're going to see an influx of applications. So in those influx of applications, they don't want to see a skeletal application where you're just sending a form without any evidence that you have a genuine marriage or any evidence that this is a parent-child relationship and stuff like that. They want to see that these applications are actually submitted because you are qualified for what it is that you're petitioning for. I can't tell you how many times that people might get upset and say, well, submit my file quicker, submit my file fast. I'm like, no. This file must be complete. We're not going to submit your file until we have all the evidence required to get your case approved. And I want to review, some people are like, don't review it, just submit it. I'm like, no, I review it page by page, every submission. When I am reviewing cases as an attorney, obviously there are things that a paralegal does or a legal assistant does where they're gathering documents together. But as an attorney, I have to ask myself when I review this application, is this application strategically sound? Does this person meet the elements, to be approved for this case? A legal assistant is looking for date of birth. Is your date of birth correct? Is your name spelled correctly? Is the name of your street address correctly? But when we as attorneys are looking at it, we're wearing the same magnifying glass as an immigration officer, on things that cannot be corrected later, on things that determine whether or not this person is eligible for this benefit. So I say that to say, and you don't have to hire me. You can go hire somebody else. But you should make sure that you're hiring a competent attorney who practices immigration law. You don't want someone that dabbles in this, right? Because of the changes it's even difficult for us attorneys to keep abreast of how much changes or revisions that happen, to the point where I try my best not to inundate you with things that are irrelevant, right? For instance, you wouldn't hear me talk about the new amendment or attempt at the administration trying to sign another revised version of the birthright citizenship, because to me it's not relevant to what I'm doing right now, and because I know that it really doesn't matter, because as far as we know, as long as a person is born in the United States, unless you're a diplomat, really at this point, I don't know how they're going to determine people that are terrorists or whatever it is. You're a U.S. citizen. So to me, it's not relevant. I focus on relevant things, which is for people who are here already that are looking to find or submit legal applications to become green card holders through whichever means or become U.S. citizens. So it is really, really, really important that you are making the right decision in preparing a sound application and submitting the strongest application you can, so that when they see that application, truly they understand that that application is not a skeletal application that's just submitted just to kind of like be a placeholder, but because they're submitting it, and truly in that case it makes sense to issue an RFE if needed, but the goal is to not even get one. Okay. All right, so let me take some questions on Instagram. I don't know if I've said this. Every single morning, I don't know how many times these guys mow the lawn. Every single morning I'm on live, they're always mowing the lawn outside. I need to like figure out what the schedule is. Like, I feel like every single morning. Okay. So let's see. Can you get a green card if you're going through a divorce while your case is pending? The answer is going to really depend on what kind of, what do you mean? Like, so I'm assuming you don't have a green card at all, right? If you don't have a green card at all, you can't get a divorce through a marriage-based green card if you're going through a divorce. Now, if you already have a 2-year green card that is conditional, you can get a 10-year green card with a divorce waiver, with the key component being that you prove that you have a good faith marriage. Also, if you are going through a divorce and you're a victim of extreme cruelty and abuse, you can get a green card through something called VAWA, which allows you to still get that green card as long as you file it before the 2-year anniversary of the divorce. Okay. Okay, so YouTube, T. Robbins says, good morning, Attorney Aisha and everyone. That's the process I'm currently in with Attorney Aisha. I'm very pleased that you're taking time to review my case very thoroughly. I'm very grateful. I guess that's what. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I think that's really important, and honestly, we have a 2-attorney round review here just because immigration is one of those voluminous practices where it requires a lot of reading. It requires several eyes on it, just because on any given day, you're never submitting any document or application that's like less than 150 pages. 150 pages. I think the most I've ever submitted was like 650 pages, and this was for like an RFE that, or a NOID or something like that. But the point is, because it's just so document intense, that you want a few eyes on it just so that everybody's catching each angle on it, and sometimes that takes time. Yes, we could just submit someone's document, they submit everything, but then it means that we're not doing a proper review. And if I'm reviewing everybody's cases, because this is something that's important to me, it takes time, right? But get it right. It's like if you're building something, if you're building a house, yes, can people build your house in 4 months? Yeah, sure. But if it takes 12 or more months, where they are making sure that that house is, customized to your lifestyle, they're checking whatever the foundation, the bricks for mold and all of those things, and any potential things that could be a problem, you can tell the difference, between a house built, in 4 months, and a house built in 12 months. So yeah. Okay. So let's see what else. I don't handle business immigration, nor do I handle employment-based immigration. So if you are asking me questions on that, I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer those ones because I don't handle that. My question was about 75 country pause. All I was told is to wait. I wish my appointment is with you and not a random attorney. Sparkling, I actually take offense with you calling the attorneys at my firm random. I think it's very disrespectful and distasteful for you to call the associates who are licensed associates that have been working in the immigration world or being licensed attorneys for 15 years, that work for me as associate attorneys. Stacey is a badass attorney, and anyone who has been in contact with her, interacted with her, knows that. I suggest that you don't take that approach when you are going to a law firm. If you're going to a law firm where there's not just one lawyer, if you believe that I'm capable of reviewing your case and answering your questions, you should also believe that I'm capable of assessing the kinds of attorneys that I bring onto my firm and are able to assess your case. Even though ultimately, whether or not they consult with you and you hire us, I'm the one who does the final review of your application, regardless of which of the attorneys at my firm you speak to. I think it is important that you don't go in with that approach, because then, you're doing a disservice to yourself, basically. Okay? All right. So let's see. Someone said, D-Real Fund Size says, I really need your help. We'll be happy to help you if we can. Give us a call, 678-325-1037, or you can schedule a consultation online yourself. Like, you can just go online to chidowelaw.com/booking and book a consult yourself as well. If it's something we're able to handle, we'll be happy to handle it for you. What do I need to do as a U.S. citizen to file for my parents and my married brother that's overseas? What are the stages? Well, if you're a U.S. citizen, the first thing you need to do is you need to file a petition for alien relative. A petition for alien relative is basically an I-130 application, which is proving that you have those relationships with those people. You are going to need to file individual applications for each of those people, meaning one for your mom, one for your dad, and one for your brother. Okay? Novia says, I love your hair. Thank you so much. I needed a change. Novia says, good morning, pretty lady. How are you doing? If you get an RFE for VAWA and you submit what was asked for, how long does it take to hear from USCIS? Please, unfortunately, your guess is as good as mine. There is no timeline once you get an RFE. An RFE is different for each officer that's reviewing it and for each case. I will say that with VAWA cases, whether or not you get an RFE, you're most likely going to get an interview, because that's what they're doing, which I suspect is what is also causing a prolonged review and delayed time for VAWA decisions, because everybody's being interviewed, and those interviews take a long time, like 3 hours, 4 hours. Like, those interviews take they're really draining, and I have so many this week and next week, like, they're just so draining. But anyway, so hopefully you hear something soon. I swear to God, these lawn mowers are so loud. Can people who are pursuing asylum still adjust for status based on marriage? I know there's a lot of new rules about adjusting status now. Yes, you can, as long as you're not in removal proceedings. If you're not in removal proceedings, you can file an adjustment of status directly with USCIS. That said, oftentimes when you do go to your interviews, they will ask you about your asylum case. So hopefully you have a legitimate and valid asylum case. You shouldn't just be filing asylum for a work permit. You should be filing it because you have a genuine case, because that can hurt you, in a marriage case if they determine that you filed a frivolous application. Mr. Tusk says, the lawn guys again every Monday. I know, right? Maybe I need to change my Monday time. They're always here every Monday. And I am working from home today. Hopefully I'll be back in the office next week once my kids are back in school. But anyway, yeah. Okay, so let's see. How soon after a green card is renewed can you pursue citizenship? So citizenship is not determined by when the green card is renewed. Citizenship is determined by how long you've been a green card holder. So 3 years through marriage, or 3 years through abuse, and abuse could be either in the form of a VAWA application approval or an I-751 waiver approval. That is only one condition. Every other category, the timeline is 5 years. So outside of the timeline, you still have to show that whatever your timeline is, that you've been in the United States for at least slightly more than half of that time in the U.S. So if it's 5 years, you want to show you've been here at least 2.5 years or more over the 5 years that you've had your green card. You want to make sure that you have not been outside of the country for more than a year at a time, because that kind of restarts your application. If it's been more than 6 months, there's a possibility that you've kind of broken continuous residence. So you have to prove that you were still continually in the United States. Also, you have to show that you have paid your taxes and filed taxes. This is one that I'm seeing very often now when people come and they say that they're on a payment plan. So let me explain something to you guys about payment plans with IRS. The issue is not being on a payment plan. The issue is choosing to be on a payment plan of something you owed in 2022 when you could have been on the payment plan in 2022. If you're getting on a payment plan in 2026 for something you owed in 2022, you will be denied. So you're better off just paying that off before you file for your taxes. So payment plan has to happen once you become eligible for a payment plan, meaning you file 2025 taxes, they tell you you owe, you're like, okay, I don't have everything to pay right now, put me on a payment plan, and then you start paying your payment plan. If that's the case, then that will be acceptable. Also, if you have children who are minors, any child under 18 that's not living with you, you have to provide some sort of proof of how you financially take care of the child. This is applicable to you whether or not you're female or you're male, whether you're a mom or your dad, whether or not they're with grandma or whether they're with your sister or brother. You have to provide proof of how you financially take care of the child. Obviously, the one that's the most obvious is that you obviously cannot have a crime of moral turpitude, because then that means you don't have good moral character. So these are just some of the things, that you need to prove. Then, obviously doing the written tests and spoken tests, and then taking the civics questions. So that's what, those are all the things that you're going to need in order to pursue citizenship. If all of those check off, then you should be filing for citizenship, okay? Ms. Vivacia says, we love you, Aisha. Thank you. Appreciate it. I-751 filed, extension issued, N-400 filed, exams done and passed, but USCIS claimed I-751 wasn't issued. N-365 filed, N-335 filed, but still experiencing delays. Processing time for I-751's passport, 4 months advice. Yeah, those are a bit delayed. N336, which I'm assuming that's what you're trying to type in here, meaning you filed like an appeal for them to rehear your case. Those do take some time. Also, I don't know. This is one that's hard for me to really assess without actually seeing it myself. And I can't tell you how many times that, I get in a consult with someone and they tell me, oh, this is what they said in the decision or whatever it is. And I get the decision and it's completely something else. So there's like 5 other things. So oftentimes I need to see the decision. So I'm really seeing and assessing what it is that they're saying to be able to provide. If you want advice, you should schedule a consultation. Okay. If you got your green card in 2023, when are you due for citizenship? You got your green card through Asylum, add 5 years to that. That's when, so the earliest time you'd be able to submit the form will be 4 years and 9 months, okay? All right, guys, I gotta jump off. Hopefully I will be able to, yeah. Let me see what time my USCIS interview is tomorrow. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'll be able to be on tomorrow. But anyway, if you would like to schedule a consultation about your own particular case, schedule a consultation with my firm. It could be with me or any of the attorneys that work at my firm. We're all capable of assessing your case and telling you if you're eligible to come to our firm. We work together here at this firm as a team. It's a collaborative effort, so you're not losing anything depending on who you get. It doesn't have to be me. I'm not available all the time. So the other attorneys are not available all the time because some of them are in hearings as well. Sometimes we're USCIS. So if you don't want your appointment to be in October, just take it with whichever one of us is available at that time. Okay, guys. If you want to schedule a consult, it's 678-325-1037 or 678-233-2170. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Bye.